Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It is your girl Vera. In her previous life, the female lead Yan Qingshu, as the daughter of the Grand Tutor, poured money and connections into elevating her fiancé from humble origins to the position of Grand Secretary, only to be repaid with her family's unjust persecution and her own death filled with regret. But she has come back with memories of her past life. This time, she absolutely won't repeat the same mistakes. Let's go. In my previous life, I placed the Yan family's ancestral pardon token into PG's hands. Me, the legitimate daughter of the Grand Tutor, bowing and scraping for a mere junior court official from the Court of Judicial Review who came from a poor family. I helped him rise smoothly through the ranks all the way to Grand Secretary, thinking it would earn me a harmonious marriage and growing old together. But on the day I went into labor, he ordered the entire estate sealed off just to make his sworn sister Ruin Zhao Zhao smile. Not even a single midwife was allowed in. I struggled in prolonged agony, my life force draining away bit by bit. Yet he stood outside the window with Ruin Zhao Zhao in his arms, coldly watching as I closed my eyes in despair. His eyes were full of hatred and satisfaction. If you hadn't used your family status to force me into marriage, how would Zhao Zhao have been wronged into becoming a concubine? Yan Qingshu, your entire Yan family thrown into prison is the compensation you owe Zhao Zhao. Only in that moment did I realize that my Yan family, full of loyal patriots, had been framed by him. I died with a heart full of hatred and regret. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the imperial betrothal ceremony at the Mid-Autumn Palace banquet. In this life, I will never repeat the same mistakes. When the emperor asked me with a smile whether there was anyone among the young talents of the court who had caught my eye, I passed over Pitied, who stood in the center of the great hall, full of pride and ambition. I walked straight toward the corner, to that with his eyes covered in white silk, sitting in a wheelchair, the former crown prince, now the Dingnan prince, Huo Lan. I knelt before the hall, my voice firm and resolute. This subject's daughter, Yan Qingshu, begs your majesty to bestow this subject's daughter in marriage to the Dingnan prince. Everyone was shocked. Father, the Grand Tutor, was so startled he dropped his wine cup. Qingshu, what nonsense is this? That Dingnan prince? How can you joke about your own lifelong happiness? The great hall fell deathly silent. Who didn't know that Dingnan Prince Huo Lan had once been Dali's god of war? Yet, 3 years ago, in the Battle of Mobei, he was ambushed, lost his sight, became crippled in both legs, and from then on never recovered, becoming a gloomy and cold Dingnan prince. Even the imperial physicians declared he wouldn't live past 25. Now he was already 24. The smile on the emperor's face also faded. Young Lady Yan, do you know what you are saying? Peiji is young and promising, and he is deeply devoted to you. I intended to grant your union. I kowtowed heavily. This subject's daughter's mind is made up. I beg your majesty to grant my wish. Peiji in the center of the great hall finally couldn't keep up the act anymore. He walked quickly to my side, lowered his voice, his tone full of impatience and suppressed anger. Yan Qingshu, have you made enough of a scene? I know it is because I accompanied Zhao Zhao to buy hairpins yesterday instead of keeping our appointment. You are throwing a tantrum at me. But the imperial marriage decree is a matter of national importance. Using someone like the Prince of Dingnan to spite me is simply outrageous. Listening to these accusations I'd heard countless times in my previous life, I only felt utterly disgusted. No matter what I did, in his eyes it was always making trouble for no reason. I slowly stood up, meeting his gaze coldly. Master Pei, where do you get the confidence to think I'd throw a tantrum over you? What are you anyway, that you'd be worth gambling my lifelong happiness over? Peiji froze. He seemed not to have expected that I, who had always obeyed his every word, would say something so heartless in public. At this moment, Ruin Zhao Zhao, who had been hiding behind PG, suddenly reddened her eyes and fell to her knees before me with a thud. Elder Sister Yan, Every wrong is Zhao Zhao's fault. It is because I suddenly had chest pains yesterday that brother had no choice but to stay and keep me company. If you are angry, you can scold me all you want. Please don't ruin your whole life just to spite brother. The Prince of Dingnan is like that. How could you bear it after marrying him? She cried like a pear blossom in the rain, evoking pity. The noble young ladies around couldn't help but whisper among themselves. Yan Qingshu usually looks so dignified, who knew she had such a temper? Exactly, Lord Pei is such a good person, yet she embarrassed him in front of everyone and chose a blind prince instead. How unreasonable. It is only because she relies on the Grand Tutor's power to bully that Miss Ruin, who has no one to depend on. I looked down from my high position at Ruin Zhaozhao's hypocritical face, the blood feud from my past life surging in my chest. I suddenly stepped forward, my eyes cold and sharp as a blade, sternly rebuking. How dare you? The great hall instantly fell so silent you could hear a pin drop. Ruin Zhaozhao was scared stiff by the aura around me, looking at me in disbelief. Peiji's eyes widened in fury, as he pulled Ruin Zhaozhao behind him, roaring out loud. Yan Qingshu, have you gone mad? Zhao Zhao's health is already weak, yet you publicly intimidate her, you shrew. I let out a cold laugh, my gaze sweeping over everyone present. These words of mine are to teach her the price of recklessly discussing the imperial family. Prince Dingnan is His Majesty's own flesh and blood, who fell ill with injuries from defending the borders for our country. She, a commoner woman without any official title, dares to spout wild words in the Great Hall and disparage a prince. According to the laws of Great Lithe, this alone is the crime of disrespect. I am the legitimate daughter of the Grand Tutor. What is wrong with me teaching a lesson to a commoner girl who doesn't know her place? My words landed with a resounding thud, slapping down a heavy accusation. The Emperor's expression instantly darkened. Peiji was also rendered speechless. While Ruin Zhaozhao was so frightened, she collapsed to the ground, not even daring to cry out loud. Peiji knew full well that if this matter were pursued, Ruin Zhaozhao would definitely be thrown into prison. He could only glare at me through gritted teeth, his eyes full of disappointment and anguish. Yan Qingshu, even if you want to attract my attention, these methods are far too disgraceful. I am telling you, if you withdraw your request from the Emperor right now and apologize to Zhao Zhao, he can let bygones be bygones. Otherwise, even if you beg me, I will never marry you. Looking at his self-righteous attitude, I almost wanted to laugh. What on earth made him think that all the women in the world had to revolve around him? Lord Pi, is your brain not quite working properly? I mocked mercilessly. Why would I give up marrying a noble and prestigious prince to marry you? A poor scholar who still needs my Yan family's support to keep up appearances. Peiji's face instantly turned purple, red like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He hated most when people mentioned his humble origins, and hated even more when people said he relied on the Yan family. You are impossible. I ignored him and turned to bow to the Emperor once more. This subject only asks Your Majesty to grant this marriage. If Your Majesty does not permit it, this subject would rather cut off her hair and become a nun than marry Peiji. His Majesty looked at my resolute expression, then glanced at Huolan, who had been silent in the corner all along. He let out a sigh. Huolan, what say you? Everyone's gaze turned to the man sitting in the wheelchair. He wore a black python robe, his frame thin yet his back straight. White silk covered his eyes, but it couldn't hide the cold aura emanating from him. His slender, defined fingers lightly tapped the armrest of the wheelchair. After a long while, his thin lips parted slightly. His voice was hoarse, as if polished by sandpaper. The legitimate daughter of Grand Tutor Yan, marrying down to this subject. It would be unfair to her. I immediately turned to look at him, my tone firm. Not unfair. This subject has long admired Your Highness's heroic feat of repelling the enemy 1,000 miles away. To be able to serve at Your Highness's side would be a blessing this subject earned over several lifetimes. Hualan's fingers suddenly froze. Though he couldn't see, I could feel that he was looking in my direction. After a long time, he let out a low laugh, carrying 30% self-mockery and 70% unclear meaning. Since Miss Yan is not afraid of hardship, this prince shall marry you then. The imperial decree was issued. I got my wish and became the future princess consort of the Prince of Dingnan. When leaving the palace, Peiji blocked my carriage. He no longer had that arrogant look from before, instead putting on a deeply wounded and heartfelt expression. Qingshu, why are you doing this to yourself? Just to spite me. You are throwing away your entire life. Is it worth it? Don't you know what kind of person Huolan is? Cold and unpredictable servants in his household are constantly being beaten and thrown out. If you marry him, how many peaceful days can you have? I sat in the carriage, lifted the curtain, and looked at him coldly. Peiji, stop flattering yourself. From today on, you go your way, I'll go mine. Oh right, since we have nothing to do with each other anymore, shouldn't you return that 3-courtyard mansion the Yan family lent to Lord Pei, and the 50 taels of silver we subsidized you with every month? Peiji's face instantly turned deathly pale. He probably never imagined I would lay out all these old accounts on the table in front of everyone like this. In the capital, the salary of a junior minister of the Court of Judicial Review was nowhere near enough to support his daily social expenses and ruin Jiaojiao's extravagant spending. All along, it had been me taking the Yan family's money, silently paving the way for him behind the scenes. Yan Qingshu, must you really go this far? Peiji lowered his voice, glaring at me through gritted teeth, as if I had committed some unforgivable sin. Ruin Jiaojiao's eyes immediately reddened as well, looking utterly wronged. Sister Yan, how can you say that about my brother? He is an honest official who never takes bribes. That money, you clearly gave it to him willingly. Now that you've changed your heart and want to marry someone else, you want to take back what you gave away. Where in the world is there such logic? I was so angry I laughed, my voice rising 8 octaves. Gave willingly, Miss Ruin? Don't tell me you have amnesia? It is all there in black and white. Every single loan has Lord Pei's fingerprint on it, and they're all currently stored in my grand tutor's estate accounting office. Since you siblings think this is the Yan family throwing ourselves at you. Fine then. Tomorrow morning I'll have the steward take these IUs and ask the Jingzhou governor to go with him to the Court of Judicial Review to settle this account properly with Lord Pei. The officials and commoners who had been watching the spectacle began pointing and whispering among themselves. Who would have thought? Lord Pei usually puts on such a noble and proud appearance, but in private, he is actually being supported by his fiancée's family. Exactly. Taking someone else's money to support a sister he has no blood relation to, and still acting like it is perfectly justified. Truly shameless. Peiji's face looked as if it had been stripped off in public and thrown on the ground to be trampled. His whole body trembled as he stared at me fixedly, his eyes bloodshot. Fine, Yin Qingshu. Very good. I, Peiji, will pay you back this money even if I have to sell everything I own. From now on, all ties between you and me are severed. He pulled Ruin Jiaojiao along and left as if fleeing. Looking at his wretched retreating figure, I lowered the carriage curtain, my heart ice cold. Sell everything he owns. In my previous life, he was used to spending lavishly. Now that I've cut off my support, I want to see what he'll use to fill that bottomless pit. Ruin Jiaojiao. Returning to the Grand Tutor's residence, Father summoned me to his study. He didn't scold me, only let out a long sigh. Qingshu, if you've seen through Peiji's true nature, just break off the engagement. Why must you drag the Prince of Dingnan into this? The Prince of Dingnan's situation is far more perilous than you imagine. I walked to Father's side, lowered my voice, my tone grave. Father, your daughter understands. But Peiji is a man of ill intentions. If I merely break off the engagement, he will surely harbor resentment, and if he gains power in the future, he will definitely turn against our Yan family. Although the Prince of Dingnan has fallen from power, He is ultimately of royal blood, with the remnants of the 100,000 Northern Garrison army behind him. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Your daughter's move is for the Yan family. Saying this, I gripped Father's hand tightly. Father or ancestral death, exemption token. Please keep it safe and never let it leave your person. It is the Yan family's last card for survival. Father looked at me deeply and nodded heavily. Since you've already decided, I will devote the entire clan's resources to pave the way for you. 3 days later, the betrothal gifts from the Prince of Dingnan's residence were delivered to the Grand Tutor's residence. There was no half-assed approach, as rumored. A full 120 palanquins of rosewood chests, lined up from one end of the street to the other. An endless stream of rare treasures and precious gems blinded the eyes of everyone in the capital. What shocked people even more was that Huo Lan came in person to present the betrothal gifts. He sat in a wheelchair, pushed by his personal guard. Though his eyes were covered with snow, white cloth, his imposing aura still made people dare not look directly at him. I stepped forward and curtsied. This subject's daughter greets your highness. Huo Lan nodded slightly, and the guard handed over a brocade box made of red sandalwood. His highness had this made overnight, saying it is a token for Miss Yan. I opened the brocade box. Inside was a twin lotus hairpin carved from mutton, fat white jade. The jade was delicate, and the carving exquisite, clearly priceless at a glance. My heart stirred. In my past life, I begged Peiji for half a month before he reluctantly bought me a crude wooden hairpin from a roadside stall. Yet he turned around and ordered the most expensive ruby kingfisher, feather buyao from Baibao Pavilion for Ruin Jiao Jiao. Thank you, your highness. This subject's daughter likes it very much. Hearing my words, the corners of Huo Lan's mouth seemed to curve into an extremely faint arc. I am glad you like it. This prince cannot give you much glory, but as long as the Dingnan prince's manor stands for one more day, it will be your backing. Huo Lan's promise was neither light nor heavy. Yet like a massive stone, it settled firmly on my heart that had been suspended for 2 lifetimes. I looked up at his pale yet stern profile, secretly vowing that in this life, I would definitely protect him completely and cure his eye disease and legs. Compared to the grandeur of the Dingnan prince's manor, Peiji's side was simply chaotic and frantic. After, I forced him to pay his debts on the street. Peiji, in order to scrape together money to fill the Yan family's debts, could only sell off those pretentious calligraphy, paintings, and antiques. Ruin Jiao Jiao was used to a life of luxury and comfort. How could she endure this kind of hardship? On the second day after the Dingnan prince's manor sent the betrothal gifts, I ran into this pair of star-crossed lovers at the capital's largest treasure pavilion. Ruin Jiao Jiao was holding a jade bracelet, unable to put it down. Big brother, this bracelet is so beautiful, the jade is so lustrous, it would definitely suit me well. Peiji glanced at the price, his expression somewhat stiff. That bracelet cost 1,500 taels of silver. If it were before, he wouldn't have batted an eye, and just made me pay for it. But now, all the money he had on him added up to only a few dozen taels. Jiao Jiao, this bracelet's color is too old-fashioned. It doesn't suit you, how about we look at something else? Peiji coaxed somewhat awkwardly. Ruin Jiao Jiao's lips trembled, and tears immediately welled up in her eyes. Big brother never minded the price before. Is it because Sister Yan doesn't give you money anymore? So now you think Jiao Jiao is a burden? Her voice was neither too loud nor too soft. Just enough for all the customers in the treasure pavilion to hear. People around immediately cast contemptuous looks. Peiji cared most about his reputation, and immediately felt like he had thorns piercing his back. What nonsense. How could I? Peiji be the type to cling to the powerful and wealthy? I walked over slowly and unhurriedly with my maid. As soon as the shopkeeper saw it was me, he immediately welcomed me with a beaming smile. Miss Yan, you've arrived. This treasure of our shop is perfectly suited for someone of your status. As soon as Ruan Jiaojiao saw it was me, she immediately clutched the bracelet tightly to her chest, like grasping at a lifeline. Yan Qingshu, what do you mean by this? I clearly set my eyes on it first. I glanced at her contemptuously, then turned to look at Pei Ji. Shopkeeper, since Miss Ruan is so fond of this treasure, I am not the type to steal what others love. I looked at Pei Ji's pale face with a half smile. I only hope Lord Pei can produce the full 1,500 taels in real silver today, and buy it generously. Don't break the beauty's heart. With that, I couldn't even be bothered to look at them again and left leisurely with my maid. Pei Ji was left hanging by me, with customers all around watching him. For the sake of that ridiculous pride, he gritted his teeth and said to the shopkeeper, "Wrap it up for me. I'll send someone with the banknote tomorrow." Just as I expected, having lost the Yan family's protection, he couldn't come up with 1,500 taels at all. To fill Ruan Jiaojiao's vanity and save face, he actually had the audacity to secretly embezzle silver from the Court of Judicial Review's treasury. In my previous life, I sold my mother's dowry to cover this deficit for him. In this life, let's see who can still save him. Half a month later, the Imperial Palace held a chrysanthemum viewing banquet. As soon as I walked into the Imperial Garden, I saw Ruan Jiaojiao surrounded by a group of noblewomen, smugly showing off the new jade bracelet on her wrist. My brother spent a fortune to find this for me. He said it is an antique from the previous dynasty. A sharp-eyed noblewoman recognized it. Isn't this the treasure of Zhenbao Pavilion? It costs 1,500 taels of silver? Lord Pei is really generous to Miss Ruan. Ruan Jiaojiao's vanity was greatly satisfied. When she turned and saw me, she immediately restrained her smile and put on a pitiful look. Sister Yan, you are here. This bracelet ... Br. Other insisted on buying it for me. Please don't be mad at him. I looked coldly at Ruan Jiaojiao's White Lotus act, finding it only laughable. Miss Ruan, you'd better keep that bracelet yourself. After all ... It was bought with silver from the Court of Judicial Review's treasury. Wearing it on your wrist. Aren't you afraid of having nightmares at night? As soon as these words came out, the surroundings instantly fell deathly silent. Ruan Jiaojiao's face turned deathly pale, and she instinctively covered her wrist. You... What nonsense are you talking? Yan Qingshu, you are making false accusations. Me slandering people? I let out a cold laugh, pressing forward step by step. The annual salary of the Dali Temple junior minister is only 100 taels. Even if Pei Ji didn't eat or drink, and saved up for 10 years, he still couldn't afford this bracelet. He recently took over the case files for the Jiangnan Salt Administration, and the treasury just happens to be short 1,500 taels of silver. How is that such a coincidence? These words struck at the heart of the matter with every sentence. The eyes of the noble ladies around instantly changed as they looked at Ruan Jiaojiao. Embezzling public funds. That is a serious crime punishable by confiscation of one's entire household. Just then, Pei Ji happened to arrive. Seeing Ruan Jiaojiao with reddened eyes, he immediately rushed over and, without distinguishing right from wrong, unleashed a torrent of angry rebuke at me. Yan Qingshu, you are bullying Jiaojiao again? How long are you going to keep pestering us? I looked at this furious man. My eyes filled only with contempt. Lord Pei, instead of throwing a fit here, you'd better think carefully about how you are going to explain yourself tomorrow when the Dali Temple minister audits the treasury silver. Pei Ji's pupils suddenly contracted, a flash of extreme terror crossing his face. How do you know? He blurted it out instinctively, which was undoubtedly a confession without interrogation. There was an uproar all around. Oh my God, Lord Pei really did embezzle the treasury silver to buy jewelry for a sworn sister with no official title. He is even willing to lose his official position, truly blinded by lust. Pei Ji's face turned pale and flushed alternately, swaying unsteadily. Brother, let me explain. I didn't know this money was... Ruan Jiaojiao panicked and tried to grab Pei Ji's sleeve, but was flung away by him. Peiji's mind was filled with thoughts of tomorrow's audit. Once the truth came out, his entire life would be ruined. He suddenly turned to look at me, his eyes full of crazed begging, just like how I had knelt on the ground in my past life begging him to spare my family. Chingshu, Chingshu, please help me. You used to care about me the most. You must have a way, right? As long as you help me make up this sum of silver, I swear I'll immediately cut ties with Zhao Zhao and marry you in a grand 8-carrier sedan chair right away. Peiji, what do you take me for? A plaything to be summoned and dismissed at will? I stepped back, disgustedly pulling away from him. You are guilty of corruption and breaking the law. You deserve to be punished. As for marrying me, in this life, the next life, don't even dream of it. Peiji's eyes instantly turned sinister. Yan Qingshu, you are refusing to save me. Are you trying to force me to my death? He lunged at me like a crazed beast. The noble ladies around us shrieked in alarm. Just as Peiji's hand was about to touch me, a sharp gust of wind whistled past. Bang! A stone hit Peiji's knee with precision. Peiji grunted in pain, his legs buckled, and he embarrassingly fell to his knees before me. Who gave you the guts to lay a hand on this king's consort? A low, cold voice rang out. Huo Lan's wheelchair approached from afar. He was still blindfolded with white silk, but the imposing pressure emanating from him dropped the temperature of the entire imperial garden to freezing point. Your Highness. I quickly walked to his side. Huo Lan naturally grasped my hand broad and strong. Were you frightened? He asked softly. I am fine. Peiji was in so much pain he collapsed on the ground, cold sweat pouring down, glaring at Huo Lan and me with eyes full of unwillingness. Dingnan King, you are nothing but insubordination. Slap his mouth. Huo Lan coldly spat out those few words. The guards behind him moved forward like ghosts, pinning Peiji down firmly. After several heavy slaps, Peiji was beaten dizzy and humiliated, unable to speak a complete sentence. Ruin Zhao Zhao was so frightened she collapsed to the side, not even daring to breathe loudly. Relay this king's decree to the Court of Judicial Review. Immediately confiscate all assets under Peiji's name and verify the case of treasury silver deficit. If there is any abuse of power for personal gain, severe punishment without leniency. 3 days later, the Minister of the Court of Judicial Review acted swiftly and thoroughly, investigated the case of Peiji's embezzlement of treasury silver, getting to the bottom of it. With irrefutable evidence, Peiji was stripped of his official position, thrown into prison, and left to await execution after autumn. And that Ruin Zhao Zhao, who had repeatedly sworn she was willing to die for Peiji, fled overnight with the few remaining valuable items from the manor, running off with a passing wealthy merchant. At that moment, I was sitting in the warm pavilion of the Prince Dingnan's manor, preparing to administer acupuncture to Huo Lan. In my previous life, to save Peiji, I learned the lost art of golden needle acupoint stimulation. Now, it was perfect for treating Huo Lan's legs. Your Highness, does it hurt? I inserted the silver needle into the acupoint on his knee, with my fingertips pressing on his legs through the fabric. My brows furrowed slightly, a trace of doubt flashing through my mind. A disabled person bedridden for 3 years should have shriveled and atrophied leg muscles. Yet Huo Lan's legs felt unexpectedly firm to the touch. Huo Lan seemed to have noticed my unusual reaction. Leaning against the couch, he calmly grasped my wrist that was holding the needle. It doesn't hurt. He shook his head, the corners of his mouth carrying a faint smile. Qingshu, these hands of yours can not only strategize brilliantly, but also work miraculous healing. He skillfully changed the subject. Peiji ended up like this. Don't you feel soft-hearted? I collected my thoughts and gave him a reproachful glance. The prince is testing me again. He brought this upon himself. What does it have to do with me? Huo Lan suddenly tightened his grip and pulled me toward him. Caught off guard, I fell into his embrace that carried a cool medicinal fragrance. Qingshu. His voice was low and husky. Marrying me, Samanon, who may face countless hidden attacks and schemes. Are you really not afraid? I raised my head and looked steadily into his eyes. Huo Lan, listen carefully. I turned the tables, tightly hugging his waist. I have no regrets, and I am absolutely not afraid. In this world, there is nothing more terrifying than the human heart, and you are the only place in this world where I can feel at peace. Huo Lan's body shook violently. He lowered his head and kissed my lips precisely. Yan Qingshu. Since you've provoked this king, don't even think about escaping in this life or the next. On the wedding day, a 10-mile, long bridal procession in red, when Huo Lan, dressed in bright red wedding attire, was wheeled before me, I lifted the red veil. His eyes were covered with red silk, yet he precisely handed one end of the red ribbon into my hand. Qingshu, I've come to marry you. On the wedding night, red candles flickering, Huo Lan dismissed everyone. He sat at the edge of the bed and suddenly raised his hand, pulling off the red silk covering his eyes. Those eyes that should have been dull and lifeless were now, in the candlelight, reflecting a profound and sharp gleam. Right after that, he suddenly stood up, strode over to me, and swept me up in his arms. I cried out in shock. Your eyes, your legs! No wonder when I applied the needles that day, I felt his muscles hadn't atrophied. Turns out he'd long had inner strength protecting his body. Huo Lan placed me on the wedding bed, leaned down close, his warm breath brushing against my ear. Shh. Qingshu, actually, I was also reborn. Huo Lan is also reborn. And his eyes and legs have been healed all along. Oh my God, in his past life he watched the woman he loved get betrayed by a heartless man, risked his last bit of strength to raise an army and seek justice for her, but couldn't save her. In this life, he originally wanted to silently protect her from the shadows, only to discover his wife was reciprocating toward him. What kind of divine mutual redemption, pure love war god is this? I widened my eyes in shock, looking at him in disbelief. His slender fingers gently caressed my cheek, his gaze full of wild joy and lingering fear. In my past life, I watched helplessly as you lost your life for Pitied. Living again, I wanted to secretly keep you safe, but never expected you would actually come to me on your own. Huo Lan's eyes reddened, and a scalding tear fell on my face. Qingshu, thank you for being willing to look back at me. Looking at this man before me who had loved me for 2 lifetimes, my tears finally broke free, and I took the initiative to kiss his lips. Huo Lan, in this life, we must both live well. Extra meeting year after year. The autumn wind blew bleakly. Outside the execution ground at the vegetable market in the capital, crowds swarmed. Today was the day of Pitied's execution after the autumn assizes. Huo Lan and I sat in a private booth at the tea house across the street. He wasn't sitting in a wheelchair, but standing upright by the window with a straight posture. Pitied in the prison cart had long lost his former high, spirited and aloof appearance. His hair was disheveled, like a stray dog that lost its home. Summoning in the crowd threw rotten vegetable leaves at him. Pitied was still desperately looking around for Ruin Zhao. Unfortunately, that woman had encountered mountain bandits half a month ago and met her end in the wilderness. Just then, Pitied seemed to sense something and suddenly raised his head, looking toward the second floor of the tea house. The moment their eyes met, his whole body shook violently. He saw me, and even more, he saw the man standing beside me, high and mighty with both eyes intact. Prince Dingnan, Huo Lan. Pitied's eyeballs nearly popped out, and his throat made gasping sounds. Impossible. He finally realized what he had done. What he had pushed away with his own hands was a pillar that could have secured him a lifetime of glory and wealth. As the supervising official's command flag fell, Pitied stared deadly in my direction, shedding 2 lines of tears filled with extreme regret. The past events, along with his sinful ending, completely vanished into smoke. Huo Lan reached out and pulled me into his embrace. Qingshu, our eyes are dirtied. Let's go home. All right, Let's go home. Not long after Peiji's death, news of Prince Dingan's recovery spread throughout the capital. When Huolan stepped into the Golden Throne Hall wearing his prince's python robe with his full aura on display, even the emperor was so startled he stood up from the dragon throne. Huolan didn't make a big fuss about it. He handed over the gold tablet inscribed with, "As if I were here in person in exchange for the military tally commanding the 100,000 troops of Zhenbei army," and requested an imperial decree for my father to take full responsibility for revising the laws of Dali. With military power in hand and civil officials won over, he used the most decisive and efficient means to firmly protect the Yan family under his wing. On New Year's Eve the year after our marriage, I diagnosed myself with a joyful pulse. The Grand Tutor's mansion and Prince Dingnan's mansion were overjoyed, but Huolan acted as if facing a formidable enemy. The tragic scene of my difficult labor in my previous life was the deepest thorn in his heart. Throughout the entire pregnancy, he pushed aside almost all military affairs and stayed by my side every step of the way. The day of childbirth happened to fall on the Mid-Autumn Festival, the same date as the imperial wedding ceremony in my previous life. When the labor pains struck, I was drenched in cold sweat. "Qing Shu, don't be afraid, I am here!" Huolan completely disregarded the worldly prejudice that it is unlucky for men to enter the delivery room and see blood, and forced his way in. He gripped my hand tightly, his eyes bloodshot. "Qing Shu, look at me. In this lifetime, I won't let anyone hurt you again." After several long and agonizing hours accompanied by a loud cry, "Congratulations, Your Highness, Your Highness, it is a healthy little heir," I collapsed weakly onto the pillow. There was no life-threatening danger, only Huolan holding me tightly, his voice trembling as he repeated his thanks over and over. "Qing Shu, thank you for being safe." He didn't even glance at his son, his heart and eyes were full only of me. I struggled to touch his cheek. "Why are you crying? You are the mighty war god. People will laugh at you." Huolan held my hand, his eyes full of affection. "As long as you are safe year after year, what does it matter if I am a laughingstock for the rest of my life?" Outside the window, the full moon of the Mid-Autumn Festival hung high. He and I had finally welcomed true completeness. The ending of this story is truly the most satisfying and most moving Dan to Dan, the Dan point Dan of Dan Goosebumps ending I've seen recently. There is none of that melodrama that is cruel just for the sake of being cruel. Only two people who've trudged through darkness for 2 lifetimes, finally embracing tightly in the sunlight. For today's video, Vera doesn't want to just treat it as a tearing apart scumbag menfields and good story to discuss, because it is more like a mirror, reflecting the pitfalls we most easily fall into in real life and intimate relationships. Come on, sisters, let's do a deep dive into the 3 master classes of life this story leaves us with. Don't be a savior for men. You can't fill someone's inferiority complex with love. Let's look at PG from the previous life. Qing Shu gave him an immunity token, gave him power and influence, even spent money to support him. But what was the result? He resented her. Why, because in the underlying logic of a patriarchal society, a man from humble origins with an extremely fragile sense of self-worth covert narcissists cannot accept that he climbed up through a woman's connections. Every bit of your grace reminds him of his incompetence. So he needs someone like Ruan Zhaojiao, a petite, young fair girl who only looks up to him and depends on him to satisfy his pathetic vanity. Stop playing savior. Stop playing the savior game. Many international student sisters are like this in real life too. Helping boyfriends revise resumes, paying rent, even being his emotional dumping ground, thinking he'll be grateful when he succeeds. But trust me, when he no longer needs you, your contributions become the dark history he most wants to erase. Qing Shu's greatest awakening in this life is keep resources for yourself and throw the IOU right in that heartless bastard's face. A true power minister never needs to put down their partner to demonstrate strength. Compare Peiji and Huo Lan. This is a typical boys' man. When Peiji got caught embezzling public funds, his first reaction was to beg Qingshu for money to smooth things over. And when that failed, he resorted to violence. This is impotent rage. And what about Huo Lan? He was once a war god, even sitting in a wheelchair, facing Peiji's provocation. He only had 2 calm words: slap his mouth. When Qingshu was giving birth, ancient people considered it taboo for men to enter the delivery room, saying seeing blood brings bad luck. But Huo Lan didn't care about these formalities at all. He knelt by the bed with reddened eyes and said, "As long as you're safe, what does it matter if this king becomes a laughingstock for life?" If he wanted to, he would. A truly powerful man has an extremely stable core. He doesn't need to gain a sense of superiority by putting women down. He will treat his partner as a comrade fighting side by side, and is willing to draw his sword against the whole world to protect you. The ultimate revenge is living beautifully. At that moment when Peiji was being tortured at the execution ground, what did he see? He saw Qingshu sitting high above, calm and composed. You just need to cut your losses in time. Take back the money and dignity that belong to you. Then find an emotionally stable partner who matches your energy, and go build your own empire. Favera's final message: you in front of the screen, perhaps you have experienced or are experiencing a relationship that is driving you crazy with mental exhaustion. Maybe you feel like you've given too much and can't let go of the sunk costs. Vera wants to tell you, please, choose yourself. Even if you end up bruised and battered like Qingshu in her past life, please show the same boldness she had when she was reborn and broke off the engagement in the Golden Throne Hall. Your family background, your knowledge, your wealth. These are the confidence you use to walk proudly in this world. Absolutely not stepping stones to pave the way for a heartless man. Take back the light you give to others and illuminate your own path. Just like the ending of the story, walk out of those narrow schemes and embrace the fulfillment that truly belongs to you. Vera's Souls and Searching Question. Bullet Screen Voting Area Sisters. Put your choices in the comments section and see who shares your wavelength. Q, if you were the Princess Dingnan with divine medical skills, and a husband who is a war god with restored sight and command of a mighty army. After giving birth to the young heir, how would you plan your next main life quests? Option A, Dali's #1 divine doctor, infrastructure and career building. Since I know the lost art of golden needle acupuncture, I'll establish Dali's first public medical academy. Not only will I teach female disciples, but I'll also establish a military medical camp to become the strongest support for Huo Lan's 100,000 Northern Garrison Army. The couple will combine civil and military strengths, embodying hardcore nations and building. Option B, Imperial Court Schemer, purge the government. Although Peiji is dead, there must still be corrupt officials in the court. I'm going to team up with Huo Lan and my father, the Grand Tutor, using my Yan family's intelligence network and Huo Lan's military power to root out all the hidden tumors, create a prosperous era of peace and clarity, and become the true kingmaker behind the scenes. Option C, professional lovey-dovey couple, experience divine romance. After enduring 2 lifetimes of torturous love, my husband has finally recovered and is completely devoted to me. Of course, I'm leaving court matters to the Emperor and my father, while I take Huo Lan and our little prince traveling around, heading south to Jiangnan to eat hairy crabs, going north to the desert to watch the stars, making up for all the romance we missed in our last life. Option D, establish a women's academy, break feudal propriety. Seeing Fushupin, like Ruin Jiaojiaoi, deeply understand how difficult it is for women in ancient times. I'm going to use the prince's manor's wealth to open the largest women's academy in the capital, teaching girls to read, do accounting, and understand reason. Let all women in the world know, never throw yourself at someone emotionally. Financial independence is the true path. Tell me your choice in the comments. Tell me your choice loudly. If you were also thrilled today by Yan Qingshu and Huo Lan's absolutely stunning double rebirth love story, and felt that Vera's in-depth analysis spoke to your heart, don't forget to give this video a big like, Faye. And subscribe to my channel. Remember to turn on the notification bell, Faye, so we won't miss any in-depth breakdown of refreshing stories. Wishing everyone, no matter what stage of life you're in, the courage to make decisive cuts when needed, and to meet that person who is willing to fight the whole world for you. See you in the next story. Peace out, love y'all.